In Matthew 18, Jesus tells a parable about a man who owed his king a lot of money. Like, so much money he was never going to be able to pay it off. The kind of debt that would be so overwhelming that it would keep you up at night. And so the king calls the man's debt and says, it's time to pay up. You've had plenty of time to start making payments. You've had plenty of time to start working towards this, but you've not been able to pay it off. It's time for me to get my money back. And so until then, I'm going to put you and your wife and your children, your entire family, you are going to go to prison until you can pay off this debt. The man begs and pleads. He's like, Sir, Your Majesty, do anything but take this away from me. I promise I will repay. But I just can't right now. I'm a little short. Things are a little tight. Johnny had to get braces, and Jill, she got sick, and things are just tight right now. I'm not able to pay. The king looks at his servant. He thinks of his family. He may even know who they are. He may have heard of the hardships they've been going through. And the king's heart goes out to him and says, man, you know what? You're right. I'm just going to forgive your debt. Don't worry about it. It's good. We're just going to take it off the books. You don't owe me a dime. Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you. He is just overwhelmed with gratitude. He is thankful that this debt, this load, this payment that was on his shoulders has been removed, and he is now set free. He immediately leaves, and as he goes out, he sees one of his fellow servants who owes him $100. I mean, not an insignificant amount, not a small number, but also not something that's super overwhelming. And when he sees him, he remembers, hey, he owes me $100, and he begins to choke him. He begins to berate him. In fact, he has this fellow servant thrown into prison until he can pay back this debt. Word gets back around to the king that this servant who he just forgave his overwhelming debt went out and had this other servant put in prison for such a small debt. And he calls his servant in, and the king looks at him and says, didn't we just have the same conversation? Didn't you beg and plead that I would hold off because you'd be able to repay? And then you go and your fellow servant responds the same way. Just saying, give me more time, give me more time, give me more time. And instead of showing mercy, you have them thrown into the same prison I was going to put you. He's like, you know that debt that I erased? We're calling that back up. And he had the man thrown into prison until he was able to repay. Like, man, this is so harsh. Well, he forgave that. Couldn't he have just kept the debt forgiven? But what we see here is, as we are forgiven, we ought to forgive others in kind. And the interactions we have with one another, the wrongs and the offenses that we share, that we have between one another, they are but just $100 compared to the overwhelming debt of our sin against God. And God calls our sin, He calls our debt to task, and He says, pay up. And we can't pay right now. Things are a little tight. I can't quite do it. Just give me more time. And He erases the debt, and He puts that payment on the back of His Son, Jesus. And we have forgiveness and we have grace, and it's all been washed away because of the payment of someone else. Someone else made the payment on our behalf. And so when we look at another, and we see how they've offended us, and we see how they have hurt us, and we see, and we hold this grudge against them, God says, how much did I forgive you? How much have you been forgiven of? And remember that large debt and you said, hey, I will repay. I'll take care of it. If we've truly been forgiven, we should be able to forgive the offenses of those against us. Our salvation is not based upon forgiving the sins of another. But the evidence of having been forgiven is being willing to forgive another person. As I shared on Sunday, what St. Fard said to me, forgiveness is for the forgiver and not the forgiven. Because as we carry this offense that someone has offended us, we are as much a prisoner of it as the other, as the offender. As we carry this hurt with us, we carry as much or greater load than they do. And by offering forgiveness, even before they apologize, even before they admit wrong, when we offer forgiveness, we often find that we ourselves have been set free. See, God could hold our offenses against us, and He could immediately call down His wrath upon us. But instead of wrath, He offers grace. Instead of wrath, He offers forgiveness. He offers a path of reconciliation so that we might be restored to Him. So we might have the debt of our sin released, and that we might be able to live in His freedom. Forgiveness is for the forgiver, not just the forgiven. And when we live in a state of forgiveness before God, we ought to freely forgive those who've trespassed against us, who've offended us, who've hurt us. And as we extend to them God's grace, we will learn more of God's grace for ourselves. And in so doing, be all the more willing to forgive others again. Isn't it great to be forgiven? It's even better when we can forgive others.